All right, here's going to be the video for our test 5 review. So if you look at number one says, write in slope-intercept form a line that contains the points 2, -5, and -3, 10. The first step that's given to you, it says find the slope. Then it says put it into point slope and solve. All right, so slope-intercept form, I'm trying to get it into y equals mx plus b. So first I've got to do slope, which I know my equation for that is m equals y2 minus y1 all divided by x2 minus x1. So I label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, and then I plug them in from there and go. So y2 is 10. My y1 is minus -5. Then I have -3 minus 2. All right, that's plugged into my slope formula. All right, and as a reminder, when we were plugging this into our calculator, we had alpha, y equals, enter. So now I have 10, okay, that negative and that negative changed to a positive here. So now I have 10 plus 5 divided by -3 minus 2, which gives me a slope of -3. All right, so now I have my slope and I have a point. So now I plug it into point slope, which is going to be y minus y1 equals m, and then x minus x1. So I plug in y minus my y1, which we said was -5, equals our m, which we just solved as -3. Then I have x minus my x1, which is 2 here. Okay, so I had my slope right here. Now I have point slope form of a line, but it's asking me for slope intercept. So I've got to keep going. All right, so once again, negative times a negative is a positive, so I change that. Now I've got to solve this. I've got to distribute that -3 over. Okay, so I get y plus 5 equals, I have -3 times x, which is -3x. Then I have -3 times -2, which is going to give me a +6. All right, now we're really close to being done. Now I've got to get y by itself, because in order to have slope-intercept, I have to have y equals. So I've got to move over that 5. So right now I have a +5, so I've got to subtract 5 on each side. So now I have y equals -3x, and I have a +6 minus 5, which will leave me a +1. So now I have y equals mx plus b. Okay, so this is my slope intercept form, which means that is now my answer. All right, so there's number 1 all worked out. Number 2, I'm just going to plug it into point slope form. This is point slope form. So I label my point x1 and y1, and I label my slope. All right, a line that passes through the point, -2, 3, and has a slope of 1/4. So now I just plug that in. I have y minus y1, which we see is 3 here, equals my m, which is 1/4. Then I have x minus my x1, which was -2. So now I just have one little change to make and I am done. Okay, I have a negative times a negative. All right, and if we go back to our triangle of multiplying and dividing by negatives and positives, okay, if I cover up my 2 negatives, I'm left with a positive. So that negative times a negative changes to a positive. So now I have it in this format, which is point slope. So now I am done. Okay, I'm going to try to label all of my forms, that way I get used to which ones are which, right? Probably not a bad idea for you guys, all right? So it says, write in slope-intercept form, a line that contains the point x1, y1, and has a slope of 3/4, okay? This is going to be very similar to the one up here, but I don't have to find the slope, it gives me the slope, all right? So, because I'm given a point and I'm given a slope, I first have to plug it into point-slope form. So here we go. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So anytime you're given a point and a slope, I'm going to plug it into point-slope form. So now I plug in my y1, which is -3, so I have y minus a -3 equals my slope, which is 3/4. In parentheses, I have x minus my x1 here, which is 12. All right, so now that is written in point slope. And once again, we're going to label that so we know what in the world it is. All right, so I have point slope there. Now from there, okay, I have a negative times a negative, so I change that to a positive. And in order to get it into slope-intercept form, that is where I have to distribute and then move that piece away from y. So I have to distribute this 3/4, and when I distribute, I multiply, okay, and then I move that -3. So let's go ahead and rewrite this first. So I have y plus 3 equals, I have 3/4 times x, which is just 3/4 x. Then I have 3/4 times -12, all right, that's where we can use our calculator to help us out. Alpha y equals, enter to get my fraction. I have 3/4 times -12, all right, which gives me a -9. All right, then from there I just have to get y by itself because I've got to have y equals for slope-intercept form, so I've got to move that 3. So right now I have a +3, so I subtract 3 on each side. So I end up getting y equals 3/4 x, and then a -9 minus 3 is going to give me -12. All right, and that is my slope-intercept form because I have y equals mx plus b. So there we go. So those top 3 there are all about moving from one form to another, all right? Using the information given and moving on to the next form, all right? So let's go ahead and look at number 4. So number 4 says, write the equation in slope-intercept form that is shown in the graph, all right? So first I'm going to find my b, which is my y-intercept. Okay, so if I look, I went down 1, 2 from my origin. So my y-intercept is -2. Okay, because I went down 1, 2 from the origin. The origin is 0, 0. Okay, then I have to find my slope. All right, I can see there's another point right here. Okay, that's where it crosses the grid perfectly. So I go ahead and look at that. I go down 1 and to the right 2. So I have down 1 and I go right 2. I'm going to write it like that to help me out and ensure that I write the slope correctly. So when I go down 1, I know down for my slope is going to be negative. So I have -1, and I know on bottom it always means right, okay? So I'm just gonna have a 2 on bottom, all right? I can kind of check this. I go down 1 over 2, and that works. That's my rise over my run. And then I can also check my symbol here. This is nice negative, okay? If you know slope, dude, this is nice negative, and I have a negative slope, which is good, okay? So now I have my slope. Now I have my y-intercept. So now I'm just gonna plug it into the form. So I have y equals m, which is -1/2 x, and then my plus b is actually -2. That is my slope slope-intercept form. Number 5 says, write the equation in slope-intercept form of the line containing the intercepts shown in the table. All right, so it says y equals mx plus b. It says find the slope from a table, just like we did in the last unit, and then we're going to plug in the point, slope, and solve. So this one actually has quite a few steps, but that's okay. So I've got to find my change in x and my change in y, okay? I do it from 3 to 0. I lose 3. Then over here, to get from 0 to negative 3, I also lose 3. Okay? All right. Let's go ahead and solve for the slope. So I know slope is change in y all over change in x. So my change in y was negative 3. My change in x is also negative 3. All right, so negative 3 over negative 3 all cancels out to become 1. So my slope is going to be 1. All right, so now I'm going to plug in a point. All right, I'm going to call this x1, y1, and now I have my slope. So I have y minus y1 equals, I have m and then x minus x1. That is my point slope form. So now I've got to plug in my information. We said that y1 was going to be 0, so I have y minus 0 equals my m, which we just said was 1. In my parentheses, I have x minus my x1, which is 3. Okay? Now this is one of Coach Wood's favorite ever, because when I subtract 0, I don't actually do anything. So I can just cross that off, all right? Subtracting by 0 doesn't do anything. So now I have to distribute this just like we would. So now I get y equals, all right, I have 1 times x, which is just x, and I have 1 times negative 3, which is just going to be negative 3. So now I have my slope-intercept form. Okay, so now I have my slope-intercept form. I have y equals mx, m being 1, x plus b, okay? One way that would have been a little easier than the suggestion here, okay, would have been to find the slope, which we found the first piece was 1. Then, if I know I'm talking about slope-intercept form, I have my slope of 1 and then my y-intercept. Okay, my y-intercept is when x equals 0. So if I look right here, okay, I could have used this negative 3 and just plugged it in automatically, okay? So I had my slope, which is the 1 that goes in front of x, okay, that's that invisible 1. And then that plus b is my y-intercept. And I know my y-intercept is when x equals 0. So I could have just plugged in that negative 3 there, all right? It would have been a little bit easier, but you also have to know how to use a y-intercept, all right? So there's that example done in one way, but talked about in 2 different ways, all right? So now let's go ahead and look at number 6. Number 6 says, write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that passes through the point 2, 4, and 4, 7. All right, this is very, very similar to number 1 up top. All right, so I have x1, y1, x2, y2. I have to find my slope. So I have m equals 7, which is my y2, minus my y1, which is 4, divided by my x2, which is 4, minus my x1, which is 2. All right, now I plug that into my calculator. I have alpha y equals, enter, 7 minus 4 divided by 4 minus 2, which gives me 3 over 2, or 3/2. So now I have my slope. I have my slope, and I still have a point from here, all right? So I'm going to plug that in. I have y minus y1 equals m, and then x minus x1. Remember, when you have a slope and you have a point, you plug it into point-slope form, okay? I want to label on this one real quick. This was point-slope form. Sorry. This was my slope. There you go. All right, so now I plug this in. So I have y minus y1, which is 4, equals m, which is 3 over 2, and then parentheses, I have x minus my x1, which is 2. Okay, that is my point slope form. Okay, but here it's not asking for point slope, it's asking for slope intercept. So I've got to keep going, all right? So now I'm going to distribute my slope, so which means I multiply. Okay, so I get y minus 4 equals, I do 3 halves times x, which is just 3 halves x. Then I have to do 3 halves times negative 2. So I do alpha y equals, enter, 3 halves times, okay, and this was a negative 2 here. So I have negative 2, enter, which gives me negative 3. Okay, so I have minus 3. So now all I have left to do is move away this minus 4 because I've got to get, for slope intercept form, I've got to get y equals all by itself, all right? So I have plus 4 and plus 4. Okay, it cancels right here. I'm running out of room just a little bit. All right. So now I rewrite this. I have y equals, I have 3 halves x, and then minus 3 plus 4 is just going to give me a plus 1 there. All right, and that is my slope intercept form. I have y equals mx plus b. Okay, so there's number 6 worked out. All right, number 7 says, write the equation of the line in point-slope form with a y-intercept of 3 and an x-intercept of negative 2. So the first thing we've got to do here is we've got to write 2 points, because it gives you 2 points, it just doesn't label them all pretty for you. So it says a y-intercept of 3. So if I know it's y-intercept, okay, that's going to go in my y value place. So I have 3. Okay, whenever I have a y-intercept, that is when x is equal to 0, okay? So remember, the other number is always 0 when I have an intercept. So it's going to be 0, 3 for that point, okay? Now come and look at this next one. It says the x-intercept is negative 2, so that negative 2 goes in that x place there. All right, since it's an intercept, the other number is always 0, and we remember that if it's an x-intercept, y is what we set equal to 0. So that's 2 ways to kind of remember that. All right, so we now have 2 points. So now it says we've got to write it in point-slope form. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. When you have 2 points, you just need to get in the habit of always finding slope first. So I have m equals, I have y2, which is 0, minus my y1, which is 3, all divided by my x2, which is negative 2, minus 0. Okay?